There's quite a bit of uncertainty about the phone call yesterday. The phone call. President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin had a talk. Lasted, some say 2 hours, some say an hour and a half. But the bigger question is what happened? Because we're getting discrepancies between the readouts, that's what they provide us. We don't have actual scripts, but we have what they call readouts. And the White House version of the readout's a little bit different than what the Kremlin readout is saying. Today, this morning, on top of that, President Trump spoke with Zelensky on the phone. We're waiting for details on that. We just have some generic statements that it was a good call, which we're not surprised to hear, but no details on what's going on. But then on top of that, if that's not complicated enough, Wall Street Journal is saying how Ukraine and Russia accuse each other of violating this partial truce already. Is that surprising? How the heck, and who's going to be monitoring this? How are we going to actually keep it in place? Well, to make some sense out of this, we have one of our favorites, Larry the Shirt Johnson, former CIA analyst. How are you, young man?
Yeah, man, getting younger by the day. Dorian Gray.
Is that what this effect has on you, Larry?
I guess.
I know why. I know why, because your blood gets flowing and you feel the adrenaline. It's like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
What just real quick, Larry, what's your take on what you see at the moment?
Trump administration's trying to put lipstick on a pig. The Russians haven't given, Vladimir Putin didn't give any significant concessions at all and stuck by his guns. And so the United States is still laboring under the delusion that we hold, even though Donald Trump is president, that he actually holds trump cards. He does not. The United States doesn't have any leverage over Russia with respect to the war in Ukraine, and for several reasons. First and foremost, the Russians are dealing with the United States now in the same way that a woman who's been battered by her spouse for years. We've got the battered spouse. The husband comes home, beats her up.
Battered spouse syndrome.
Battered spouse syndrome, and then pleads, "Oh, forgive me, I didn't mean it. I want to," and then comes back and does it again and again and again. And there comes a point where the battered spouse, at that point, either pulls out a gun and shoots the bastard, or they leave. And that's the attitude the Russians now have with respect to the United States. When you look at the record over the last 35 years, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Russians said, "Hey, great, let us join NATO." We told them, "Screw off. If you join NATO, we don't have any reason to keep spending billions of dollars to fund NATO." So the United States rebuffed repeated requests. We started arming and equipping Ukraine, signed the first agreement with them back in 1998 to carry out military exercises in Ukraine that were designed to target Russia. We withdrew from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty Agreement under George W. Bush in 2001. We rejected, again, a request by Vladimir Putin in 2000 to join NATO. Again, told him to screw off. We ignored his warnings in 2007 not to invite Ukraine and Georgia into NATO. The U.S. backed a Georgian invasion of Russia in 2008, which the Russians easily defeated in about 2 weeks. The United States, with the United Kingdom, overthrew the government and Ukraine, the elected president. They say, "Oh, he was corrupt." Well, America, look in the damn mirror with the corruption. I can tell you right now the names, I won't, the name of a Democrat senator who's taken $23 million from the Ukrainians, and the name of a Republican senator who's taken $17.2 million. Okay? So I don't want to hear anybody talk about this guy was corrupt and under the control of the Russians. We need to clean up our own damn house first. But we overthrew the coup. Overthrew that government via a coup in 2014, and the new government that we helped install started a civil war against Russian-speaking citizens of Ukraine, and then a peace agreement that we were involved with indirectly, the Minsk II agreement, a ceasefire that was violated. And France and Germany both admitted subsequently that the only reason they entered into that was to fool the Russians and give the Ukrainians time to build up. Then Trump in 2018 withdraws from the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Agreement. So time after, and then 2022, there was actual peace deal. This is one thing that Sergei Lavrov said to me last week. And it also said to the judge and Maria Nafal, who was there, that when they sat down with the Ukrainians in Istanbul in March, end of March of 2022, the Ukrainians brought a suggested peace deal, and the Russians signed off on it. They were willing in principle to accept most of what Ukraine was requesting, and we destroyed it. So here we are now, and the United States is saying, oh, Russia, trust me. Russians don't trust us. They're going to watch our actions. They welcome our nice words. But even Trump is thinking, oh, I'm Mr. Peace. Yeah, you're the one that bragging that you send javelins to kill Russians. Do you think if Putin was saying, man, I sent all these missiles that killed a bunch of Americans, do you think Americans would be going, yeah, that's great. Mr. Putin's wonderful. I mean, this is the level of stupidity we're dealing with. It's shocking.
Larry, that is one long list. You're like an encyclopedia. That is one hell of a list there that you just went through. It's staggering.
It's the truth. So America, wake up to our responsibility. You know, we're the bad guys in this relationship, not the Russians.
Gotcha. Larry, let me take you through just a couple of things that's being said now by this administration. Just this morning, Mike Waltz was on, and this is how he characterized, this moment in time.
There's some reports out there that said that he kept the president waiting.
Completely false, garbage, fake news. This is between two heads of state, a major call. There's, sometimes some technical difficulties. The call started on time, and it lasted for a very long time. They went into some operational details of the fighting. They went into big picture on how to implement the ceasefire, prisoner exchanges, people that are being detained. They covered a lot of ground. And everybody agrees now, it's not if the war ends, we're debating how the war ends.
You know, I do think that is the one, silver lining that what he just ended with, which is that, it's not if it's going to end, it's just when it's going to end, that there's actually efforts being put forth towards that. As unfortunate is not a strong word, as horrific as the history that you just brought us through. And that is what it is. But where are we now? And, I have to agree with them that is the good news. There is good news here, and that being it, that they're talking, something that Biden never even considered doing. Shame. Yeah, no,
the Russians welcome the fact that Trump is willing to talk, that the West appears willing to negotiate. The problem is a lot of the Trump team is armed with some false assumptions, false premises, namely that Russia's economy is weak, and that therefore they want to get out of this war as soon as possible because they're hurting, and that Russia has suffered
we hear that all the time.
Massive casualties. Both are not true. They're both lies. They're both propaganda generated by a combination of Ukrainian and Western intelligence activity. Russia's economy is just fine. Yeah, they've got some inflation, and they'd prefer not to be spending as much money on weapons systems, prefer to be spending more money upon public infrastructure. But, it's already the cities are beautiful, clean. But they're under no pressure on that front, and they've not lost 800,000 killed, as some have claimed. Not even close.
Yeah, I loved your report, Larry. What you said after, if everyone watching doesn't know, Larry was just in Russia, and he spoke with what's Larry's title?
Security. The foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov.
Foreign minister, right? Yeah.
Right.
And so Larry was there and meeting with him, and he gave a great report as to what he saw. And if anyone hasn't seen it yet, please check out Larry's YouTube channel, because he gives a full rundown on what that whole event or his trip there was all about.
You have to go to sonar21.com.
Oh, that too.
Find it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there also. Good. And in relation to that, Larry, I think Trump is revealing. This is a very short clip, so it's only 6 seconds long. But listen very carefully what Trump says here. This is from last night.
You have a lot of guns pointing at each other, and a ceasefire without going a little bit further would have been tough.
It would have been tough going forward with the ceasefire without the details that needed to be worked out. I think in that short little mention of what he says, it would have been tough. Yeah, meaning he's really saying it would have been impossible to have a ceasefire without these qualifications that are now being worked out. So I think in that moment there, he was saying so much, I thought, and almost not capitulating, but admitting that he doesn't hold the cards, that it's Putin that is going to be steering these negotiations for the most part, right, Larry?
Well, Putin stated the Russian position very clearly in June of 2024 in a speech to the Russian Security Council. And I specifically asked Sergei Lavrov last Monday, a week ago Monday, that basically Putin's position that he elucidated in June of 2024 still held. And Lavrov, without missing a beat, said basically, yes, hasn't changed. So what was that position? Well, that position was that if you're going to go towards a negotiated solution to this war, several things have to happen before you finally get the negotiations underway to hammer out details. Number one, Ukraine has to end all military operations on Russian territory, which Russia identifies as Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. Those are 4 oblasts that Russia brought into its federation in September in a vote in September 2022. Secondly, no role ever for Ukraine in NATO. That's out. Number 3, new elections. That Zelensky is not accepted or recognized as a legitimate president because he canceled elections and continued in violation of the Ukrainian constitution. Fourth, an end to U.S. and Western military, financial, and intelligence support to the government of Ukraine. Fifth, stop conducting persecution of Russian-speaking speakers in Ukraine, the Ukrainian citizens who have grown up speaking Russian all their lives. So that's where, and so yesterday in those talks with Trump, Putin didn't back off from that one bit. No. And he said, oh, yeah, okay, we'll do a 30-day ceasefire on attacking energy infrastructure. Well, number one, let's recognize Russia's already destroyed most of the energy infrastructure in Ukraine. So, you know what? After we've shot out 10 windows in your house and you have one window left, we say, okay, yeah, we're going to stop shooting windows out. Well, you've already shot them all out. That's number one. Number two, spring is here. So, 2 days, starting to, on Friday, it's spring, and the effect of depriving Ukrainians of heat by virtue of destroying the power plants is no longer an effective strategy. So, yeah, he could give that away to Trump. It didn't cost Russia a thing. And so Trump's going to find out that Russia is not going to roll over. Russia doesn't need anything from the United States. That's what the American people need to understand. That's what Trump and his team need to understand. Russia is not under any pressure that they need a deal because, man, it's getting tough out here. No, they're content to beat the hell out of Ukraine until they achieve their military objectives.
You know, Lara, I'd like to pick up on the fourth point that you made regarding the provision of military and intelligence aid. And here's one of the in the opening when I said there are discrepancies. Here's one of the discrepancies. Now, last night, Trump went on with Laura Ingraham, and she asked him very pointedly about the provision of aid. And here's how Trump spoke about it.
Was there non-negotiables mentioned by Putin? It was reported that I think the Kremlin media actually stated that he demanded an immediate cessation of aid to Ukraine in order to get to this multi-step deal.
No, he didn't. We didn't talk about aid, actually. We didn't talk about aid at all. We talked about a lot of things, but aid was never discussed.
Yeah, that's a lie. It's not true.
Right.
Because Russia said they absolutely did talk about it, or at least
right, exactly.
Putin,
and this is
Putin listed it as a demand.
Yes, and the fact that here's how they described it: the Russian president told his American counterpart that a key condition for preventing further escalation and reaching a political and diplomatic solution in Ukraine must be the complete cessation of foreign military aid and intelligence to support Kyiv.
Yeah.
And Larry, just as we were right before we came on the air, there was a White House briefing going on, and Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary. I didn't hear the question, but I heard her say that at least the intelligence is not going to be stopped. She said it very straightforwardly that indeed the intelligence is not being lifted or stopped.
Yeah. So we're facilitating the murder of Russian citizens. Would the United States stand by and allow for 1 minute the Russians providing intelligence support to, let's say, Mexican drug cartels that were carrying out attacks on American citizens? No, hell no. That'd be unacceptable. So,
Larry, I was so surprised when Trump stopped it, and then 7 days later he reinitiated it back in. Yeah. Why didn't he just hold on to that? Do you have any insight on that as to what his thinking might have been? No
insight whatsoever. All I can do is comment on the fact that that's what he's done. And so, look, Trump likes to talk. Yeah. Then we look at it's not always backed up by action. Well, he says he wants peace with Russia. Okay, fine. Stop giving Ukraine the ammunition to shoot at Russians, both intelligence ammunition and physical ammunition. Stop it. Call Zelensky up and say, "Hey, this is done. It's over. This ends now. And here's your visa to come to the United States. But if you don't cooperate, if you don't do it, bye-bye visa. You're on your own."
Larry, that is the ceasefire. If he stopped both of those things, for any length of time. I mean, when he first did that, the chatter was, I shouldn't say chatter, but even some of the official take is that there's enough in the pipeline that they can last whatever. I've seen anything between 4 weeks and 6 months. That if it literally did cold turkey stop, that there's enough in the pipeline that they have supplies for quite a bit longer.
Right.
But indeed, that would be the ceasefire, whether it was in 4 weeks or 6 months. That would indeed stop the fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, until Trump gets serious about that, this war is going to continue, and Russia is going to continue crushing Ukraine. And with each passing day, Putin's made it pretty clear that he's going to take control of what is known as Novorossiya. So that goes beyond the Donbass. That includes all the territory along the west bank of the Dnieper River, all the way down to the Black Sea, and including Odessa. Whether Russia is able to achieve all of that this year or it spills over into next year, but Ukraine's ability to continue this, there it is.
So you're saying that, and just to explain to people,
the dark red.
Right, correct. What Russia now has occupied is the striped area, the red striped area, but
Right.
then the dark red area is what Larry's now describing.
Yeah, that's Novorossiya. So that would include Kharkiv, Kherson, and Odessa, and Mykolaiv as well. So that's really what I think Russia's going to wind up with taking, and whether it happens this year or next year, they're going to ultimately get it, and there's nothing the West can do to stop it.
Putin's a patient man, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's not just Putin. This, we make the mistake if we think this is all Putin's decision. If anything, one of the big criticisms of Putin in Russia is he's too soft. He's too diplomatic.
Right, yeah.
I mean, if Medvedev was back in as president, we'd probably be at war right now. The United States would have a lot of smoldering cities.
Yeah, his statements are a little bit more acerbic than Putin's, right?
Yeah, no, he's but it's not. Again, this there's a broad support in Russia for this war effort. The only frustration is that they think Putin's pursuing it too slowly.
Right.
And Putin, meanwhile, I think he's trying to minimize Russian casualties and try to avoid a complete rupture with the West. But he's also realistic enough to recognize that a complete rupture may be unavoidable.
We do have a response from Trump regarding the conversation he had with Zelensky this morning. There's one interesting point, I think, at the end. So Donald Trump says, just completed a very good telephone call with President Zelensky of Ukraine. Lasted approximately 1 hour. Much of the discussion was based on the call made yesterday with President Putin in order to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their requests and needs. We are very much on track, and I will ask Marco Rubio and National Security Waltz to give an accurate description of the points discussed. Then there's going to be more coming out. I think it's interesting, Larry, that he says we're very much on track. I don't think it's the track that Ukraine's interested in at all. I think when he says we're very much on track, although he was talking about the phone call that he had with Zelensky, I think he's on track. I don't know if he's twisting Zelensky's arm, having him, face up to reality. But I do think that that's the direction he's going. Do you read it like that?
No, not really. This is just Trump saying, "Hey, look what a great job I'm doing, man! I am cutting the deal of the century." Meanwhile, you're going to see Zelensky's comments, I think, probably later today, if he hasn't already made them, basically saying, "Hell no, we didn't agree to that." He completely reversed, came out in opposition to what Waltz and Rubio announced the other day out of Jeddah. I mean, within 2 hours, complete opposite.
Right.
So, I think where this is headed is ultimately the United States is going to have to get rid of, if they want the Ukrainians to play along with this charade, they're going to have to get rid of Zelensky.
Well, I think that's what Trump will end up having to do, because he says, "Listen, I knew we were on track. It's just that we couldn't keep Zelensky on the train, so we had to disband with him. But we're on track because we're going to do what we're going to do, with or without Zelensky." That's how I read that. Yeah.
Look, Russia. I personally, there's no negotiated settlement to this war,
right?
Without a military victory on the field. Not going to happen. This is not Korea, that everybody we fought to a draw. Russia's not. It's not a stalemate. Keep hearing these people say, "Oh, Russia's stalemated. Russia's losing." I mean, General H.R. McMaster, God, he said some stupid stuff, and Danny talked about that on a show yesterday. Just incredible. It's just flat out ignorant. This is not like you got an opinion of who makes the best vanilla ice cream. Okay, that's a matter of taste, a matter of opinion. That's not what we're talking about here. Russia is not weak. Russia's not on its heels. Ukraine is not strong. Ukraine is not winning. So, stop telling yourself lies.
Here's the other lie, Laren. It drives me crazy. This is someone that gets a lot of airtime. Former CIA, and well, let me just play his clip, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Okay.
Listen, going back to his KGB days, the United States is Russia's main enemy, glavny protivnik, because everything we stand for, democracy, freedom, and liberty, everything enshrined in the Constitution and Bill of Rights, that's what scares Putin the most.
My goodness. What scares Putin the most, Larry?
You know, what he did was a verbal demonstration of total, utter bullshit. I mean, a complete... The fact that, you know, he was chief of station, I believe, in Moscow in between 2002, 2004, and that time, I think. I'm not sure of the precise, but it's been definitely within the last 24 years, because he's not that old of a guy.
Except he's maintained a Cold War mentality.
Oh, absolutely. You know, he's describing the Soviet Union, which ended in 1991. I had a conversation yesterday with a fellow I met in Moscow. I'll leave his name out of it, but he graduated from West Point in 1974. He was a classmate of David Petraeus and Keith Alexander. He served 14 years in the U.S. Army. He was president of the Russian club at West Point. And he was a Russian from a family that had fled the Soviet Union. So there were Russians who opposed the communists, the Bolsheviks, who were living here in the United States and who joined the U.S. military and served honorably. And he visited, after he graduated from West Point in 1974, he got special orders so that he could go tour both Belarus as well as Russia. And he described it as it was a police state. It was sort of like what Hoffman was describing. But then he started going back in 2005. He was working as providing security for U.S. oil companies that were working in Russia. And what a difference. So this man is an Eastern Orthodox Christian. And what you've seen under Putin is that they've rebuilt more than 1,000 churches across Russia. 1,000 churches.
So this is recently they've built these churches. These aren't old historic churches.
No, these are the last 25 years. More than 1,000 churches built at the direct orders of Vladimir Putin. The elections are free. They just, people say, oh, how could he get 82% of the vote? Yeah, because he knows how to do his damn job. Okay? Go to Moscow, see it for yourself. Go to St. Petersburg. Go to any of the Russian cities. Clean. They are magnificent. They are safe. Compare that to San Francisco or Los Angeles or New York or Atlanta or Philadelphia or Washington, D.C., please.
All right. So Lara, what is the resistance to seeing the transition that you just described? What is the resistance on our side, at least in America, as to seeing Russia as it now is? Is there just too much money flowing into those old pockets of the industrial complex? Is that what it is?
Yes. I mean, if we stop having Russia as an enemy, remember, he's our enemy, then by God, we can't justify $1 trillion defense budget.
It comes down to that, right, Larry? Yeah, I mean, there's no A, B, or C. There's just A, right? Basically, there's just A.
It's that simple. Okay, let's use this. Let's come up with metrics. How many people have died as a result of orders issued by Vladimir Putin? Now, if you read a lot of the Western propaganda, they identify 12 people, including Navalny, the opposition, the CIA asset that was being used to pretend to be an opposition politician. 12 people. Okay. Well, how many people have died at the orders of because of orders issued by George W. Bush? More than 1 million. Ask the people in Iraq. Ask the people in Afghanistan. How about Barack Obama? Hundreds of thousands, again, in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya. The blood that's on the hands of American presidents exceeds anything that is on the hands of Vladimir Putin up until this war in Ukraine, which is a proxy war that the United States has launched against Russia. And we accuse Russia of being the aggressor. And Russia's fighting back, and it's true. More than 1 million Ukrainians have died. But they've died because of U.S. weapons and U.S. intelligence sending them into battle not capable of fighting.
Yeah. Oh, it's I tell you, on a similar note, but a very different note, I was so elated when you saw, I think you saw, Danny, at the end, well, I don't know, at the end of the call, during the call, I believe it was Putin that suggested that that our National Hockey League and their National Hockey League start having games to start having some relationships. So I loved hearing that. I thought, yeah, there we go. There's a step in the right direction.
Of course, that means that Alex Ovechkin, who plays for the Washington Capitals, will he go and play for Russia? Because he is Russian.
Oh,
some of the top
really?
players.
Okay.
Remember, some of the top players in the NHL are Russian citizens.
I did not know that. I thought it was the Canadians that came down and infiltrated. So the Russians have infiltrated our NHL?
Yeah. Remember, Ovechkin now is, last I checked, 8 goals away from beating Wayne Gretzky's record.
No, you're kidding. I'm so out of touch with the NHL.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And so the Russian players continue to dominate. And
how about that?
Yeah. But again, it would be a good move.
It really would be, right?
We go back to the so-called Miracle on Ice in January 1980.
1980 or something?
Yeah, January 1980, when the U.S. hockey team beat the Russians. But again, that was always in the context of the Cold War competition, because back then under Carter, Brzezinski really his security advisor, Brzezinski, played a major role in helping provoke the Russian invasion of Afghanistan because of support we were giving to radical Islamic elements, and the Russians went in to try to quell that and try to restore order to the civilian government. And then under Reagan, we embarked upon this policy of funding radical Islamists to go kill Soviets. And so this notion that we never supported terrorism, another self-deceit.
Well, let's get these games going. I think that would be a great step in the right direction and start creating some more just goodwill on both sides. So anyway, I hope that that happens sooner rather than later. Larry, love having you on, my man. I love hearing your take on things and getting to the bottom of some of this. And we'll keep getting to the bottom of it. We'll have more to get to the bottom of when we hear Zelensky's response and what goes on. They're meeting, I think, even later this week. The two teams, Russian and American teams, are meeting later on this week in Saudi Arabia. So we'll have
supposed to. So too. We'll see if anything comes of it.
Yeah. So anyway, everybody check out sonar21.com. Everything Larry is there. He covers it all, does it all the time. Every day there's updates. So make sure you check him out there. And Larry, we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Gary. Bye-bye.
All right. And everybody, we're going to have Danny coming up at 3:30. Let me get the site, what we got going on here. Oh, yeah. Ukraine launching new attacks into Russia, and it's actually harming itself. So come back at 3:30 today, and we'll see you then. All right? Unintimidated, uncompromised.